Welcome back to another episode of the Leading Yourself podcast. I'm so excited to dive into today's episode because we're going to explore how to make the most out of this final months of the year. Can you believe that we're only 90 days away from the end of the year? Actually, less than 90 days. Now, you might be thinking, well, I haven't met all my goals this year, or it's too late to make real progress. But it's not true. In fact, the last 90 days could be the most productive and transformative part of the year if you approach it with the right mindset and the right strategy. So today, we're going to talk about how you can double down on focus, create momentum, and finish the year stronger than you started. Welcome to the Leading Yourself podcast. This is your host, Carolina de Arriba. I'm an HR professional, health and fitness coach, wife, mom, and above all things, a goal-getter. In this podcast, we're going to be digging into all things leadership, professional and career development, habits, and relationships. This is a podcast for those who want to become the best version of themselves. Those who have big dreams and are willing to embrace the journey and put in the work to achieve them. My goal is to share with you the tools, tips, and tricks to help you in your journey. So let's dig into today's episode. Can you believe that we have entered the last quarter of the year? The last 90 days of 2024. Actually, less than 90 days because the countdown started officially October 3rd. No matter when you're listening to this is a good time to double down on our focus to create momentum and to finish the year strong, stronger than you started it. So let's start by talking about why this last quarter of the year, this last 90 days of the year are so crucial. When we get to the end of the year, it's easy to coast. We start thinking about the holidays, the family gatherings, and everything else that can distract us from our goals. But here's the thing. How you finish the year is often a reflection of how you'll start the next year. And that is something that I always like to remind myself. Because if you are actually coasting for the remaining of the year, if you have already give up on your goals, is that the mindset and the attitude that you want to carry into the next year? Absolutely not. We all think about the new year as this fresh start, as this opportunity to speed up, to go all in, to create momentum. But as I mentioned on last week's podcast episode about the last 90-day challenge, you can apply the law of physics to your goals. Bodies in motion remain in motion. If you park your goals for the remaining of the year, it's going to be so hard to get from 0 to 100 miles per hour in January 1st. We need to start to create momentum and leverage this last 90 days, this last quarter of the year, many days left in the year to create that momentum. So we can reflect that and take that with us into the new year. The final quarter of the year is an incredible opportunity to set the tone for the new year. This is your chance to close loops on unfinished goals, to reflect on your progress, and to build momentum for the future. Think of these last 90 days of the year as a runway. Each day is getting you closer to the taking off into the next chapter of your life, into the next year. But if we spend this last few months just waiting for January 1st to roll around, we lose valuable time that could be spent making meaningful progress. Instead of slowing down, we should be ramping up. The last 90 days are about momentum. If you want to start the new year strong, you need to finish this one strong. And that's what I want to talk about today. I'm going to share with you some thoughts on how we can do that. So before you can create a plan for the next 90 days, you need to take a moment to reflect on the year so far. This isn't about beating yourself up for what you haven't accomplished, but it's about beginning to be honest and getting clarity on what it still matters, right? It's not what is not done, but what it still matters. Because priorities change throughout the year, things change throughout the year. Maybe you pivoted at one point during the year. A lot of people, if I were to ask you what were the goals that you set January 1st of 2024, you might not even remember what goals you set. In some cases, you might remember the goals, but you're like, I don't know what I was thinking back then. My life is so different now than it was when I set those goals, and those are not meaningful anymore. So why pursue goals that are not meaningful, right? So this first part of reflection and refocus is so important. Here are some questions that you can ask yourself as you reflect on what has happened so far in the year for the purpose of our conversation today. I'm planning a series of podcast episodes on planning for the new year because I'm a nerd when it comes to plan for the new year. And I actually start now to plan for 2025. And I'm going to share with you the process that I follow. One of the things that I do is a calendar audit. And there's a different set of questions there that will be coming on a different episode. But today, just so we get the juices going, and you have an opportunity to reflect a little bit and be honest with yourself and get that clarity on what still matters, here are some questions you can reflect or ask yourself. The first one is, what were the goals that you set in the beginning of the year? As I said, maybe you don't even remember. Maybe you do. Hopefully you wrote them down somewhere that you can go and easily find them. But where were the goals that you set at the beginning of the year? The second question is, which of those goals have you accomplished? And the reason I want you to ask this question is because I want you to celebrate those wins right now. I know the year is not over yet, and you might be thinking, I celebrate on December 1st. Don't wait. Let's celebrate now. Let's look back and which of those goals have you accomplished and celebrate those wins. Maybe you haven't accomplished any of them, but you've made significant progress on some of them. That is also worth celebrating. So take a moment to just celebrate all your wins. What I like about this exercise or this reflection is that it puts you in the right mindset, more of an abundance mindset, more of a winning mindset, which is going to be critical going forward for the remaining of the year. Just reflecting on your wins can help create some intrinsic motivation and some momentum, which we are going to need if we want to end the year strong. Another question you can ask yourself is, what goals have you fallen behind on and why? It's not only about the goals that you haven't accomplished, but most importantly, the why. What got on your way? It could be that you got distracted. It could be that your priorities change. It could be that you procrastinated. Whatever the reason is, try to reflect on why is that you've fallen behind on those goals. And be brutally honest with yourself on the true reason why that happened, right? We're not trying to make excuses here, but that why is very important. Because as you reflect on the why, what you are doing is you're identifying some critical barriers that have been on your way so far this year. And that information, that knowledge is so powerful because it can help you avoid the same situations in the next 90 days. It can avoid you tripping over the same obstacles again. Another thing that I want you to ask yourself is, which goals no longer feel relevant or important to you? I mentioned this before, and it's very important. Things change. We all know that. The only constant is change. And maybe the goals that you set at the beginning of the year are not longer relevant, or they don't resonate with you, or they don't align with what you want right now, or you want for your future. So which goals no longer feel relevant or important to you? once you've reflected on the year, it's time to refocus. I love this word. Actually, this is my theme for October. Every month I pick a theme for the month, and this month for me is refocus. I think this is so critical if we want to make the most out of this last quarter of the year. Maybe some of the goals you set in January aren't aligned with where you are now. That's okay. The key is to focus on what's most important in this season of your life. And this can take some time to do this exercise, right? To refocus on your goals and really narrow down the goals that you really want to accomplish this year. Being realistic, but at the same time, setting goals that challenge you, that excite you. Now that you have that clarity, you can choose the top 2 or 3 goals that you want to double down on the next 90, 80, how many days are left in the year. And the key here is that reflection gives you the clarity to refocus your energy on what really matters in this last part of the year. And that is really the key, right? It's how can you gain that clarity out of this reflection, and how can you refocus your energy, redirect your energy to what really matters? That's why I want you to pick only 2 or 3 goals at the most, right? If your list started at the beginning of the year with 20 goals, it is going to be impossible to accomplish all of them in 90 days, right? So I want you to pick the 2 or 3 most important, the ones that are, let's say, a must for you to accomplish this year, and make sure that they are set in a realistic way. Maybe those goals are still too big and you need to break them down to say, okay, by the end of this year, this is what I want to accomplish, and the rest will be a goal that will move to 2025. So that reflection and that focus is so important. The next thing that I want to talk about, now that you have that clarity, now that you have refocusing and redirecting your energy, is on building momentum with small wins. So let's talk about that. When you think about achieving big goals, it's easy to get overwhelmed. The key to building momentum, though, is to focus on small, consistent wins. Each small win builds confidence and creates that forward motion that we're looking, right? So it's important, now that you have those 2, 3 goals that you want to focus for the next 90 days, to break those goals down into even smaller chunks, like bite-sized chunks. If your goal is to run, let's say, a 10K by the end of the year, maybe the first step is committing to running 3 days a week for 20 minutes. If your goal is to launch a side business, maybe is starting by deciding an hour every evening to planning, researching, and building your product. Those are just examples, right? But you get the point. We want to break those goals that you picked into bite-sized chunks. This is very important to avoid feeling overwhelmed, because there's only so many days left in the year. The pressure is going to go up. I don't know about you, but I always feel stress. One thing that creates stress for me is the feeling that I'm going to be late, the feeling that I'm not going to deliver on time. And because there's only so many days left in the year, and we have so many holidays in between, it's easy to get stressed and overwhelmed by the lack of progress towards our goals. And maybe you are making the progress, but you don't see it because you are seeing this big goal, right? So that's why breaking it down into smaller chunks is so important. And remember, progress is progress. Even if you're moving slower than you'd like to, small wins compound over time. And that needs to be the focus right now. If you want to stay focused, you need to take small steps and build consistency. Focus on winning each day. And before you know it, you'll be amazed at how far you've come. That's why I love the last 90-day challenge so much, because it's precisely built around this concept of those small wins. It's about habits that are going to enable you to show up as your better version of yourself, habits that are going to help you with achieving your personal goals and becoming that version of you that you aspire to become. But they're small. They're things you can do and actually should do every single day, right? So they're very small. But the compound effect of installing those 5 habits is going to create tremendous momentum. And at the end of the 90 days, it will become part of you. They will become second nature. So they will enable you to start the year 2025 with a complete different energy and a complete different drive and a complete different level of consistency around things that are enabling you to win. That's why I love the last 90-day challenge. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, go listen last week's episode because I broke down this challenge for you. Actually, last week's episode is a rebroadcast from last year's podcast because I thought I did a pretty good job and I couldn't do better this year. So I just reutilized that podcast episode. Maybe you did the challenge with me last year. And if you didn't, and if you're new to this community, come join us. We also have a WhatsApp group that you can join where we're keeping each other accountable for the last 90-day challenge. If you want to join it, I will put the link on the show notes of today's podcast episode. Okay, let's get back to the topic today. So we said, first, we gain clarity and we refocus our energy. Then we build momentum with small wins by breaking down our goals into bite-sized chunks and celebrating those wins, focusing on consistency and building that compound effect over time. Remember, small, consistent actions lead to big results. So don't underestimate the power of daily progress. Now that we have all of that, it's time to double down on focus. This is the part where we really get into the meat of how to finish the year strong, and that is focus. Focus is the ability to zero in on what matters most and block out distractions. It's about being intentional with your time, with your energy, and with your attention. And the truth is, during the last few months of the year, during this last quarter of the year, distractions are everywhere. I mean, holiday preparations, holidays themselves, social media, year-end work projects, family events, they all compete for your attention. So how do you maintain your focus? First, simply, you don't need to do everything. And just understanding and accepting this is so important. Choose 2 or 3 things that you will make the biggest impact and focus on those. Say no to distractions that don't align with your goals. The second thing is you want to create a schedule that supports your focus. So block out specific times in your day to work on your priorities. If mornings are your most productive time, commit to using that time for deep work. If your most productive time is at night, block some time in the evenings to work on that deep work, right? The key here is use your most productive time, the time that you feel you have the best energy, that you're the most productive, that you're the most creative, to block an hour of time to work on those things. For me, that is in the morning. So an hour before I start working on anything, I dedicate that time, at least 30 minutes. Not always I can do an hour, but at least 30 minutes to work on something related with these priorities that I want to, and these things that I want to accomplish before the end of the year. The key is to be intentional with your time and protect your time from interruptions. So Things that you can do to protect your time is to limit your distractions. Things like turning off notifications, limiting social media scrolling, create an environment that supports your focus, right? So with social media, for example, maybe being as drastic as deleting the apps from your phone and say, okay, if I want to check social media, it's going to have to be only on the weekends, and I'm going to delete the app all week, and I'll reinstall it on the weekend and check it on the weekend. I don't know. Get creative, but think about what are the things today that are distracting you the most, and how can you minimize those distractions? For example, for me, I know that I'm not starting any new TV show this time of the year because I get addicted once I start. So that's why I don't watch that much TV overall. But lately, I have been hooked with this TV show that I just finished. And I promise myself I'm not starting a new one because I know that is going to be a distraction. The time that I would use to watch that TV show, I'm going to invest in working on those things that I want to double down on for this last chunk of the year. Now, there's one thing that we need to talk also that is critical here, and that is accountability and consistency. So let's talk about these two critical elements of success. Accountability can be the game changer when it comes to achieving your goals. So here's my tip for accountability. Find someone that you trust. Maybe it's a friend, a mentor, or even an accountability group, and share your goals with them. Share what are your goals for this last quarter of the year. And then have regular check-ins that can keep you on track and give you that extra push when motivation starts to fade away, because it will. Now you might be very motivated because you have a path forward and that is driving you to start taking action, but at one time is going to fade off. So having an accountability buddy can be a great strategy to hold you accountable for this last quarter of the year. Then consistency is equally important. It's not about being perfect. It's about showing up every day, even when it's hard. Building momentum requires consistency, and consistency requires commitment. If you can stay consistent for these last 90 days, or how many days are left by the time you listen to this episode, even when life gets busy or challenges arise, you'll finish the year with a sense of pride and accomplishment that is going to give you so much energy and momentum into the new year. Accountability and consistency are the cornerstones of success in this final quarter. So keep showing up for yourself every single day for the remaining of the year. That is the key. One last thing that I want to talk about is cultivating a growth mindset. One of the biggest obstacles to finishing the year strong is a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset says, I haven't achieved my goals yet, so what's the point? Or I've already failed, so I might as well give up. A growth mindset, on the other hand, says I still have time to make progress, and every day is an opportunity to improve. To cultivate that growth mindset that I'm talking about, you need to focus on the progress rather than the outcome. That is so important at this time of the year. I want you to celebrate the effort that you're putting in, not just the results. And remember, challenges are part of the journey, and they can help you grow if you approach them with the right attitude. A growth mindset will keep you resilient and focused, even when the path gets tough. And I'm sure it will, right? It's not a matter of if it will, it's a matter of when it will get tough. So cultivating that growth mindset is so important. Investing in your mindset in this last stretch of the year is so important. Okay, as we close out today's episode, I want to remind you that you still have time to make this year great. The last 90 days, this last quarter of the year is a gift, an opportunity to focus, to double down on what matters most, and to build momentum into the new year. So I want you to take some time today to reflect on your goals, to get clear on your priorities, and commit to showing up for yourself every day for the rest of the year. And remember, it's not about how you start the year, it's about how you finish it. So let's finish 2024 strong and creating that momentum that will leak into next year. Thank you so much for tuning in to the podcast this week. I hope that this episode inspired you. And if it did, please share it with someone that could use a little extra motivation to end the year strong. And until next time, keep working on your goals, double down on your focus. Let's create some momentum. And I'll talk to you next week on another episode of the Leading Yourself podcast. Okay, my friend, that's all I've got for you today. But before you go, 2 quick reminders. Number 1, if we're not already friends on Instagram, let's get connected. You can find me as Leading Yourself Podcast. Number 2, make sure you're subscribed to the podcast so you never miss an episode. Thank you so much for joining me today. I am incredibly grateful that you're in this journey with me. I want to leave you with one last thought. I want to remind you that you're destined for more and that every step that you take brings you closer to becoming that best version of yourself. Embrace each day as a chance to learn, grow, and chase your dreams. The world needs you to shine brightly, so go out and show up fully and authentically. Take care, and I'll see you next time.